Thank you all so much for being here. I was telling Mark this is officially our most popular Lunch and Learn, so welcome. This is if you haven't tuned in yet, this is the Alumni Association's Lunch and Learn series, and we've been hosting these about every Thursday where we have different alumni and people associated with the university come and talk to us about different topics. And today we are lucky enough to have Mark Power, who is our Vice Chancellor for Advancement here at the University of Arkansas. So I'm going to hand this off to Mark, and you all are welcome, like I said, to turn your cameras on so we can see your faces, so he doesn't have to look at black boxes. And also feel free to ask questions or make comments in the chat box while he's giving his presentation, and I will facilitate those to Mark while he's giving his presentation as well. So Mark.
Okay, thank you. All right, well, Mary Kate, thank you for that great introduction, and I appreciate everybody taking time out of their day to join me. Now, I do expect this to be a very interactive session. I want to hear from everyone. There's a lot going on right now in the world of fundraising, and so as much as we can share today with one another, I know that will help us all in the long run. So let me also thank Brandy Cox-Jackson, who's joined us today, and the entire team at the Arkansas Alumni Association. This is such a great idea, these lunch and learns. Hope everyone got something good to eat during our lunch and learn today. And these happy hours that have been going on as well, just a lot of great ways to connect during this time. So I want to thank Brandy and her entire team as well. But it is a pleasure to join you today. For those that don't know me, if you'll just bear with me for a minute, I want to just give a little bit about who I am, a little background before we get started. I'm actually entering my 20th year now at the university, believe it or not. Just keep hanging around, and I guess that's okay. But I'm a native of Fayetteville, and I left when I was younger and moved to Texas, and called the detour to Texas. And then we after I graduated college, came back to Arkansas. Had a couple of positions before joining the university in 2001, and I've just been very blessed to be a part of the great University of Arkansas and all that's been happening. Boy, what a transformation that we've seen in 20 years here at our institution, and it's just been an honor to be a part of some of that. So I wanted to start with that. Again, thank you all for joining in. I'd like to really begin by talking about, where we are today, and what are some of the variables that are facing us as we go forward. As you know, we've really been in our staying at home, remote work assignment, all of that. And I've got a few PowerPoint slides that Mary Kate's going to pull up to help guide our conversation today. But there's a lot that still is unknown, obviously. And one thing that we want to be, very aware of is the day-to-day changes that we're all facing. And so things don't look all that rosy still in terms of fundraising. Most of us are experiencing a downturn, or have these last couple of months. We've really been trying to rally to figure out what some of this new normal will mean for us. And so, with the crisis itself, and it's hitting many families and friends and companies and workers, and, just down the line, it's something that is unprecedented. We've heard that word before, but it's truly the case. It's not something that we've ever experienced before. So just in the back of our mind, we have to keep, obviously, all of those things, what's really in front of us, and how do we begin to be very strategic about our approach with fundraising as we go forward, and being very thoughtful. So that's really the lead in today. I want to call this a thoughtful conversation. And as I mentioned, please turn your mic on, show us your face, and join in the conversation all along. And then if not, please feel free to post questions on our chat, and we will definitely get to those. So with that, let me start by talking about the remote work assignment. I just feel like I need to spend a few minutes talking about what this means, and to us, and to all of those that are in this fundraising profession. And I also realize that we are in a point where those joining the call today, we may be in a varied position within fundraising. Some of us, that's our job, and I've got some tremendous colleagues on the call today that I've seen. I'm just so thankful for our entire advancement team and the work they do. We've got some that are with some nonprofit organizations in the community, and then of course we've got those that may be in a volunteer role or so forth. And so I know there's varied backgrounds of why you've joined the call today. But with that in mind, most of us have gone to this remote work assignment. And I think that it's important to talk about some things there, just share some thoughts that I have to make sure that we're all doing the best that we can. It really lays the foundation for how we're going to move forward in our fundraising. So Mary Kate, if you would move on to that next slide. I've been telling everybody that we have really our number one assignment in this whole process that we're going through is to stay safe. Again, we're in the midst of an unprecedented crisis. And for all of us, that's the thing we have to wake up every day thinking about is how do I take care of myself? How do I stay safe, take care of my family and my friends? We can't do the work we're doing or can't continue to do the work we're doing unless we really are trying to stay safe and take care of ourselves, not only mentally, but physically as well. And I know there's so many challenges with being in a remote work assignment, whether you're home or some other place. These are some things that are always, they're difficult. They're new to us all. I've said this before, for advancement professionals and fundraisers, this is very unnatural for us too, even more so perhaps, because our job is to be on the road and face-to-face meetings and being at events and being very public. To suddenly have to be home and be in front of a camera or be on the phone perhaps more than we can, that can present some challenges. But we're going to talk about some things I think that will help with that. One thing I've done too is to try to start every day with just some very positive thoughts about the day ahead or the week ahead. Not knowing exactly how long this will continue, we have to keep our positivity in front of us. That's what's so critical. And then along the same line, to be very empathetic with what's going on in the world around us. That is so critical. So that's how I'll just let you know, that's kind of how I start my day, just thinking and looking at quotes and trying to have very positive thoughts and being very empathetic throughout the day. The last thing is, what an opportunity really to think about developing new skills for yourself and for your team. I would say that before we all went into this, and I know there are others beyond those in the fundraising profession that have suddenly have new technical skills that a couple of months ago, none of us would have ever thought we would have had. I probably was on 5 team calls prior to this outbreak, and now we've all probably been on about 500. That's the truth. So, it has really changed the way that we are communicating with each other. So that skill, I think, will carry on once we are back to what may be a new normal, may not be normal, but a new normal. That's going to help us a great deal. I really think so. The other thing that I've been trying to work on is just what are some of the other critical skills that I think I have shortfalls in. What can I do while I'm taking this time? And honestly, one of the things I've been really trying to work on is some of my writing skills. As I've been communicating with colleagues or donors or others, that's something for me that I've always felt like that is something that I need to work on, better communication or writing skills. So I've been trying to do more of that. So those are just a couple of examples. And I know there are many more, out there thinking about how are these new skills going to help us in the future. But that's my start here, is to talk about our remote work assignment and just some thoughts to put in there. Please, if anybody has any other thoughts about this, weigh in, put in a question or turn your mic on, and we can definitely talk more about it. Any thoughts to share with that? That's okay. Oh, we've got.
I was just going to say, Mark, a lot of folks, in development and leadership have been offering free webinars and
Yes.
free, classes where you can just log on at your convenience and watch. I know at least Mitchell has, and just some of our even local companies that are strong leadership team builders. And so I think just taking care of those and making sure your team knows that those things are out there
Yes.
to help keep them motivated.
Yeah, that's a great point, Christina. Thank you. I'm probably going to mention this a little bit later, but this may be a good time to say that. One thing that's happened with all of this is you look nationally at a lot of organizations like CASE, or you look at our local chapter like the Northwest Arkansas AFP or AFP International. Some of the consulting firms around the country, some big consulting firms, they have been really putting out a lot of information and pulling together, probably more so than I've ever seen. I mean, obviously this is a tough time, so they want to be very proactive in their communications with all of the fundraising teams and so forth. But I would encourage everyone to take a close look at some of those resources, because I've sat in on several of those throughout the last few weeks, and many of them have been very good. And such, like you mentioned, Mitchell, some of these local ones as well. So thank you. That's a great point. I think I saw something come in about what
resources have
resources.
you used?
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Actually, there's several books that I purchased years ago that I never even really opened. I'll admit it. And so I brought them home with me, and I've just been reading through some of those. That's been really and I can share those with you. Some of the books that I have that have been helping me. But that's just a few books that I've been trying to work through. So that's a great question. Anything else right now?
Mark,
Hey, Lacey.
I've noticed a kind of a grassroots effort on the engagement side through our AppSec colleagues, and also I was invited onto a call with some ACC alumni colleagues recently. Just really an effort to reach out and touch base about what people are doing, how they're managing different issues. It's been really positive. I mean, it's like keeping the wind in my sails right now to get in touch with people, and then it's resulted in sort of one-off conversations on various issues and how we're dealing with things. So it's definitely been a silver lining.
Yeah, it really has. I would say that that we've all probably been more intentional about our outreach with one another and sharing ideas and thoughts. Because in the past, perhaps we're busy, and it's 6 months later, we're asking a question of a colleague, whereas now it's 6 hours later, we're trying to, hey, what are you doing right now? So that's a great point, and I encourage all of us to stay in close communication with each other and share those ideas. All right, well, good. Well, let's move on, Mary Kay, to our next slide. I'm going to spend I've got next 2 slides, I guess. I'm going to spend some time on each of these so that we can have really good, I hope, very thoughtful discussions about what I consider to be opportunity as well as strategy. The first one, and these aren't necessarily in any particular order, but I think that each of them will hit the main targets today. But I want to just start with engaging board and volunteers. I know a number of us, again, with each different organization may have a different role with a board or how we're managing or working with volunteers. But this is, to me, something that it may be easy to forget a little bit about right now. I know that sounds maybe a little bit strange because we're such in that immediacy of everything. But we really have to think about what our board and how our board is positioned to help each of our organizations, or in some cases, like here at the University of Arkansas, where we have a campaign ongoing right now that's scheduled to end in a couple of months, but we've had a very strong volunteer base for a number of years. What are we doing to really, communicate and get them involved and collaborate during this time? And I just want to spend some time, and I'd love to hear everyone's thoughts as well about what best practices are out there. There's no question that everybody's aware of what's going on, and and many volunteers may be thinking, what role can I play right now, specifically in the organization, or as a board member, perhaps of a local or a national nonprofit, whatever it may be. What really is my role right now? And so I just want to encourage that communication and that collaboration really stay strong right now, because again, these are the ones that are behind us the most, honestly. Obviously our donors are as well, but these are the ones that are really helping us lead. And if we are not being communicative and more collaborative collaborative with them, I think we're missing some opportunities right now. And it's ways to be creative, how they can help us. Can they, as the CEO, or in our case, could our chancellor, presidents of the boards, heads of boards, can they get on calls with us? Can they do some outreach for us? You know, what role can they play? So I do want to just start there and have others that are on the call that perhaps have been working very closely with volunteers and or board members share any thoughts that they might have. I feel like something's coming.
Well, hi, Mark. I was trying to unmute my
Hey,
mic.
Kate.
I'm Katie Nelson. I think most of you know me, but I'm the Associate Vice Chancellor for University Development. And I participated in a call yesterday with other development team members at our SEC institution schools. And some of the SEC schools are utilizing board members and volunteers to schedule smaller, more intimate Zoom meetings with campus leadership, so with various deans or say a prominent faculty member, and they're asking the volunteers to identify the couples that participate, and they have been able to engage with people they've been trying to connect with for years. But so that's one way they're using their volunteers. And they also see that one of the nice outcomes of using this technology is, again, they're able to have more direct conversations with alumni and donors. And they're reaching, again, people that have been trying to engage for a long time, but now people are at home and they have the time to have these conversations.
Yeah. That's a great example. Thank you, Katie. And as many of you know, Katie leads our development effort and just does such a great job. So appreciate that input there. Other thoughts that anyone has experienced? That's all right. We're going to move around a lot, so there may be some questions that come back. So let's move on to talk about our communication with our donors right now. And you know, this is something I'll be honest. When this first started to come down, I felt a little frozen. I'll put it out there. I didn't know exactly what, to be talking about or what to be saying, or, I know that may sound funny, but there was this moment in time where I was like, whoa, and so I really obviously had to take some time and break through that and then figure out some strategies of what's important going forward. So I've laid out a few bullets here that I want to talk about. And the first one, of course, is that outreach is critical. I'm beginning my day and ending my day with either a call, text, or email to some of our donors. And I'll be honest, that the regularity of me doing that was not there, was not there perhaps before. Because it may have been being swallowed up in meetings or just doing other things or traveling. That outreach, just being right in front of them all of a sudden with a phone call. I've had some of the best conversations that I probably have in my 20 years. It's really been great. And I know how important that has been. And I know a number of our directors of development who are on the call today, their deans and others across campus, faculty and others have had some tremendous outreach in this time. And that is so critical. We just can't get frozen. We've really got to make sure that we're out there and communicating in the midst of all that's going on. And I understand that, but they want to hear from us. They want to know what's going on. And along those same lines is the messaging component of this. What's our message right now? At the university, we are been thinking a lot about what is the message. We have developed what we call Determined to Help. It's a website it's a web page, as part of our university website that really outlines all the ways that you can help or things the university, our faculty, staff, and students are doing in this time to impact COVID-19. And so that communication, how we're getting that kind of messaging out to our donors, what are the immediate needs right now, that is so critical to what's happening. A lot of questions come up about the conversations continuing with giving, or even in this case, really major giving is where this particular bullet I want to spend some time on. there's a lot of schools of thought, and I understand that we've got to be understanding of this time and where we are. But I think we have got to find strategic ways to continue the conversations with our donors that are considering large investments in our organizations. Now, we may want to be them leading us a little bit more than we normally would be. They are wanting, we want them to be feeling like they're still in a good place, again, amidst all that's happening. But, the conversations need to continue. And although in many ways we aren't being as proactive at the university, I would say, with our major gift asks or solicitations, you would say, but this has got to stay on the table, and we've got to find ways to make sure those conversations are continuing. Those that are strategic about this whole area of communication, I think when we do come out of this, we'll be in much better position than others that may be just stepping back a little bit and not pushing quite as much. And the last bullet, of course, is just talking about the impact of giving. And how you're truly demonstrating that, right now. And it can be some simple touches. One thing we're doing at the university is just being a little bit more creative with some of the thank yous that are coming out from the chancellor and even myself during this time. Electronically, we're showing pictures of campus. We're doing some things that we normally wouldn't be doing. But we just want to add a special touch right now and showing the impact of their gifts and why that's so important right now. So again, overall, that area of communication with donors, love to hear more input from you all, or if there are questions, please let me know.
Mark, I have a question.
Hey, George.
Hey, how are you?
Good.
So I was just curious, just with the changing of needs during this time, how does this impact the role of education? How do you see it changing the role of education overall?
Yeah. Well, again, I think that if you look at how universities are always, should be on the forefront of helping solve the world's problems, higher education and our students, faculty, staff, the role we play right now is so important in looking forward. So I think education even becomes more critical during times like these. And you do see sometimes a spike with people who are actually interested now when the economy is not as strong, might go back to college and get that next degree or something like that, which is great. So I think that's a great question, George, but I think education plays a significant role in all of this moving forward.
Mark, I second that.
Hey, Ren.
In the Walton College, specifically, we've had our dean mention the amount of people who are interested in participating in education. So
yeah,
we can definitely take that and use that to our advantage.
Mm-hmm. Certainly can. It's great.
I would say United Way is worldwide, in our local office is kind of pivoting over the next probably 30 days about more to recovery than crisis.
Yes.
And that as a community, it will take a collective group of nonprofits and corporate partners in our community to really pivot us back to recovery. And it will take all of us. And so, everything from education to all of our nonprofits in the community, as well as our corporations. And so that's kind of been our pivot language with our donors as we move forward, and how it will be important that we're all working collectively together.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Christina. Thank you. That's excellent. Other thoughts? Anything on the chat?
Nope.
Okay.
Not at the moment.
Okay, great.
Say really quickly that our office is using a platform called ThankView, which some of you may be familiar with, to send out thank yous. And it's a really nice way to personally engage with donors. And I just want to call out my team for enlisting student callers to make those thank you videos to really personally thank people.
Sure. Thank you, Lizzie. And to Lizzie and the entire annual giving team at the university, done a great job during this time and getting us positioned to where we need to be with our annual fund solicitations, which actually moves us on. It's a good segue into our next, what I'm calling strengthening giving venues. So if the conversations related to major giving perhaps is taking a little bit of a pause, just due to the circumstances, one thing that shouldn't be taking a pause is really our annual giving efforts. We have got to continue those, because for most of us, that is the bread and butter of the baseline or our organization and what we're doing to reach out and solicit donations every day, every week, every year. So annual giving plays such a critical role, I believe, going forward in all of this. I know Lizzie and I have had great conversations about how we can position ourselves going forward as well. Now, one thing that we've done, and some other institutions across the country are doing this as well, and it may be happening strategically with some other nonprofits, is creating those emergency funds, for lack of a better term. It's essentially saying, we've hit the crisis, we see a great need, and here's how you can help. And what we did is really focused on our students first and providing them some necessary necessary funds to bridge suddenly a financial crisis that was unexpected to them. So we quickly mobilized, were able to put together several funds that could impact certain areas, one general fund, but there are others that are helping with our veterans or helping with our graduate students. There's some unit-based initiatives as well, like within our Walton College of Business, and they are all doing. I've just been very pleased with the support that has come in. It does give a way for our donors to say, hey, there is that immediate need, let me help. And then we want to be able to show them the immediate impact of what these emergency funds are able to do. Now there's balance with all this. So if you've got an annual fund solicitation that is due to go out in the next, let's say, or was due to go out last month, or it's due to go out later this month, I mean, I think those should likely continue. Now, again, it may be how it's positioned. Is it a year-end fund, annual solicitation? You want to drop a little note in that just says that we're aware of COVID, but we need to continue what we're doing, or is specific to some emergent need. But so that very much strengthening the giving venues through annual giving and emergency funding is very important.
Mark,
The other point I want to make here is, did someone have a question? Yep.
Mark, Leanne has a question real quick. She said she wanted to know your thoughts or what you're seeing in the SEC with planned giving initiatives during the time.
Yes, in fact, that is my one of my last. You don't see it yet, but it's coming. I'm going to talk about that because, yes, it's important. So I'll get to that a little bit later if that's okay. Great. Were there any other on there, Mary Kate? Other
Not
questions?
at the moment.
Okay, great. So the next part was just talking about corporate and foundation partnerships. I think that's another area that cannot be overlooked in this time. Now, I realize there are a number of companies around the country that are really in some financial distress, and it may be tough as they're looking at corporate philanthropy. But I also think there's some strategic partnerships that could align very well with a number of our organizations. So I just want to make sure that's out there, that we aren't overlooking specific corporate partnerships. And on the same side, keeping foundations, regional, national foundations, top of mind as well, because they are, again, required every year to provide, funding. That's what they do. So maybe there's now an opening that may not have been there before for our organization that we want to take advantage of. So again, looking at annual giving, strengthening annual giving, also the corporate and foundation partnerships are some things during this time that we want to strengthen. Okay, I think on to the next slide here. A question?
Hi, Razorbacks. This is
Anna
Callaway Waglin now. I used to work with y'all at in the Office of Annual Giving, and now I'm at Iowa State University, and I'm with our foundation raising money for the College of Engineering. So I had a question about Giving Day, and I know that it had been obviously postponed, but is there any discussion about doing something virtually? Because I just love everything about Giving Day, and was sad that it had to be canceled. But I'm just wondering if there's anything planning for it in the short.
That's a great question, and I'm glad that you brought that up. I should have probably addressed that before, but we made a decision to just take a pause on our Giving Day. Of course, it was scheduled originally to be the first part of April. And therefore, again, we just felt like the timing wasn't there. Now, we know there are other universities across the country that have done their giving days. They shifted their messaging a little bit. Of course, yesterday was the giving day, the Tuesday. So some of these things have continued. We've just decided that we're going to wait until around June 1 because we feel like we'll have more decisions related to not only our capital campaign, but the campus itself. We think we may be in a little bit different position. We don't want it to go away. We want it to happen. So at some point, in the near future, we'll make a decision about that. But we've had tremendous success with it, and we want it to live on and be successful again. So, thank you. Good, great questions. Thank you. Okay, so the next slide, I want to talk about, call protect assets, and really what I mean here is how we're protecting our organization, but really also taking advantage of some things that have come to help us during this time. And let me start with the CARES Act. The CARES Act was passed. I think we're all probably pretty aware of this now. The CARES Act was passed about 6-7 weeks ago, the $2.2 trillion act. Now, within that, there were some what I think are real opportunities. And the first one I want to talk about maybe a little different than talking about fundraising, but it means a lot to us. And that was the Payroll Protection Program. Many of you may be familiar with this, and if you have others that are in some small businesses or other organizations, that you may have already taken advantage of this. But it's something that if you haven't, and your organization is in a position to qualify, I would look into that, because essentially what that's doing is allowing you to keep your team intact through a loan that could become a grant program. As long as all the requirements are fulfilled. So I want to put that out there, the Payroll Protection Program, to make everybody aware of that, and see if there are those on the call today at institutions or organizations that might qualify. The second part of that, of course, just tax-based giving incentives. So the first one was a temporary universal charitable deduction. So it's allowing non-itemizing taxpayer to deduct up to $300 in charitable gifts of cash. Now that's got to be important. It's cash. Now again, currently only we know itemizing taxpayers can deduct charitable gifts, and that's only about 10% of all taxpayers. So this would allow all non-itemizing taxpayers this opportunity to benefit from this charitable deduction. Now, I think we'd all be hopeful that this would have been a little bit higher. Honestly, $300 is great, but at the end of the day, I think. And hopefully, if there's another conversation about this, that we can be in the forefront of that. But having it higher than $300 would be, I think, more beneficial to many of our organizations. But it is something that we all need to be aware of. The second part is just the temporary suspension of the adjusted gross income. So currently, if someone makes a cash gift, and again, this is all based on cash, a cash gift to your organization, they could deduct up to 60% of their adjusted gross income for that year. Now, I know we're talking about a pretty small group of donors that would actually qualify for this, but it's something to keep in mind. Now the 60% is now 100%. So if someone makes a gift this year, they could actually deduct 100% up to their adjusted gross income. So if someone is making a large gift, this could be something that would be really a good incentive for them as well. A couple of other notes: the corporate, the tax, now you can, cash contributions can be deducted up to 25% instead of 10%. So a 15% increase there for corporations making cash donations. We got to keep that in mind. And then the charitable contributions of food that have changed as well. You can deduct now a higher level than you previously could. And for us on campus with our Full Circle Food Pantry, we've got to keep that stocked and keep it moving as much as we can. So these kinds of things could help situations like that and other food organizations around the country as well. One other thing that, so those are really some of the tax-based incentives that I saw. There could be more, and they could increase, they could change a little bit. But again, I think for all of us in fundraising, it's important to have those top of mind. The last item I had on here was just to talk about events. And this relates a little bit to how we're going about planning events. At the university, most of our events are not fundraising, if not really, I would say hardly any are truly fundraising events. We may have a few, but many organizations, and in my previous life with the American Cancer Society, events were really the bread and butter of a lot of the fundraising that we did. And of course, we're sort of on a hiatus with most of our events right now. So how can you take your events and make them virtual, and then perhaps even engage your donors and some of your corporate sponsors in perhaps virtual events? Now, this all I know we've all done a lot of postponing, and I know we're not supposed to, the best thing is to say postpone. We're really trying to hope to be back in the near future with something. But, the idea that if it's important and you think it's going to be worthwhile, try to do something virtually and then engage your donor base with that effort. And I've seen a couple of organizations that have done that recently. It looks like they've had some success. It may not be what had been, previously budgeted for or expected. But I would say that, in this situation, when you have events and they're part of your bottom line, protecting that base, that support is going to be really critical going forward. So there's a lot been talked about out there as well as related to events. So I would take a close look at what you can do going forward. Questions about any of that or thoughts? Anybody'd like to weigh in there?
Mark, we have someone who's asked for a clarification. They said, Sure. How can people give in cash without giving in person?
Well, I mean, yeah, I think that the idea of it's a cash base. So this is not going to be something like a real estate gift or a stock transfer or something like the checks or cash or something like that is what is indicated there. So now we do, I think there's ways to take cash. We are still at the university processing gifts a couple of days a week. So if someone does want to make a cash or in cash gift, we can certainly do that. But I think it's the mechanisms around things that are not cash based. Other thoughts, questions? Okay, so let's move on to the next slide or the next area, and that's just talking what I call plan for sensitivities. And then this is to Leanne, to your question about plan gifts and what they mean during this time. Obviously, it's very sensitive, to be talking about plan gifts during this time. And I have noted there have been a few organizations that perhaps didn't handle that appropriately at the beginning, but it's, I think, conversations that need to continue to occur, just being very aware of, where things are right now. And so with that, what we're doing at the university is that we're really beginning a more marketing effort around charitable gift annuities. And the reason that we're doing that is because those are life income. That's a life income gift. So for someone who is in need of some life income right now, the rate of return that they will get on this is not anything that they might be able to get in the market right now. And so if they're thinking about a charitable gift, a gift annuity could be a really good strategy for them at this point. And so that's something that we're going to focus on going forward. But plan gifts, that conversation and discussion, I believe, again, with knowing all the sensitivities, those kinds of discussions can continue as well. And then the last note I want to make is about IRAs. One of the provisions in the CARES Act that actually doesn't really benefit us. We have at the university taken advantage of the IRA rollover when a donor at age 72 is required to take a minimum distribution out of their IRA. They can roll that over up to $100,000 to a charitable organization tax-free, and so allows them some more, giving opportunities as they are required to take their minimum distribution. That's actually been suspended this year. So the requirement for donors age 72, their IRAs, they don't have to take the required minimum distribution this year. That is actually moved to next year. So it's something that we're going to be very careful about and reviewing and looking at, because we've had a number of significant commitments through the years from this IRA rollover program that's been very beneficial. So just something else to keep in mind. Other organizations, you may have been experiencing some of these IRA rollovers. We want to encourage those. We really want to say, please continue to provide this to us, even though this year they wouldn't necessarily have to. So great area to talk more about, the area of planned gifts. And I'll say this, I really want to, in that whole area about the CARES Act and tax-based giving incentives and all of that, these are helpful. There's no question about it. But to me, what we do in our communication with our donors and how we're engaging our volunteers and donors, our board members at this time, it will produce greater results than what's going to happen with, some of these tax-based giving. When you look at the reasons why people give, and you look at the top 10 reasons, tax benefits are somewhere around 6 or 7. So it's not going to be right at the top for us. What's right at the top is supporting a mission of an organization with great integrity who's making a difference in people's lives. So that's, again, the message that we really want to be pushing forward right now. Any questions about any of these topics right now? I know we've got some of our Planned Giving team on the call today as well. I don't know if they want to weigh in with any thoughts. If they do, that'd be great. Not, that's okay too.
Mark?
Yeah.
I would just say, even though...
Hey, Jim.
Hi. I would say, even though required minimum distributions are not in play this year, they're suspended for 2020.
Yeah.
IRA rollovers are still a great way to give for people to pay off pledges and also to make a gift without regard to whether they itemize or not. So there's still a lot of benefit for a charitable IRA rollover, even though the required minimum distribution reason for giving is not in play this year.
Great point. Thank you. Great point. Other thoughts? One thing I didn't necessarily mention, but I know that it's another discussion point for all of us, has been within our organizations, pledge payments or pledges that are coming, perhaps a payment is coming due during this time. There's been, I think, what do you continue to do? What do you continue to ask them to make their pledge? Well, I say, yes, you do. Our pledge payment, yes. But what we've done there is we're gonna be deliberate about reaching out to a number of our donors saying a pledge payment is due on your pledge. But we also would give them the option for deferral for a little bit of time, just so that they, again, are aware that we're aware that some circumstance may have come up that might be preventing them to make that pledge payment right now. So, but I would say, on the other hand, we want to continue to seek those pledge payments the best way we can, but be very thoughtful about that approach.
I have a question in the chat here, Mark.
Okay.
It says, any crystal ball reading on whether national corporations are going to reduce their sponsorships this year? It seems like a lot of corporate charitable funds have been used for emergency response and matching employee contributions as of late. Yeah,
that really is a great question. I was reading an article about that the other day as well. I hope not. I think that's where the relationships that we have with our corporate leaders, those in corporations that are close to us, maybe their board members and so forth, we really need to be talking about the importance of our organization and continuing that support. Yeah, I would say that it's going to be very possible that there will be some lowering of giving in that regard, sponsorship giving. But again, if we can be on the front end of working with those closest to us and those that have been really supportive of our efforts in the past, I would say that, we're still trying to continue to receive corporate gifts, and we're continuing those solicitations as well. I just saw a note that popped in here, it looked like from Katie. So our sustainability consortium, it's a program on campus. We continue to receive, $50,000 to $100,000 type investments during this time. And again, this may be because, they're continuing to see the value and importance of being a part of the sustainability consortium. So definitely corporate giving is continuing.
Mark, I have a question.
Yes.
So can you tell me what's going on in the world of grant writing and grant proposals and, fundraising just through that?
Sure. I would say that, we are continuing, if you're thinking about a grant from a foundation perhaps or something like that, again, I think that needs to be a part of the whole, your whole plan going forward, that, grants and grant writing. And I know even on the, if you're looking at a university side, looking at other grants, maybe the state grants or federal grants, that type of thing, that's really beyond our work here in development, but those grants and all of that are continuing to go forward as well. So doing the best we can with what's, given to us there. Good question. Yeah, there's another good point that's just come in here as well. I think you talk about that there is this investment perhaps in organizations that are really on the front line of helping, whether it's medical research or providing personal protective equipment. It may be something that their organization is feeling a great need right now, and gifts from foundations, corporations are going to continue to help support those particular efforts. So that's a great point as well. Good. All right. Well, this has all been terrific. Thank you. The next part of my discussion was just to continue to have some discussion and dialogue, thinking through all of what we've talked about today. I would love to hear again from everyone or anyone who would like to jump in and talk more about what's going on in the world of fundraising right now. What are some things that perhaps that I've missed as discussion points but need to come forward? So I'd love for anybody to write in or go ahead and open up your mic and talk a little bit about it.
Lizzie has a question about athletics fundraising.
Yes, yeah, that's a good question too. The athletics piece, that's a lot. Everybody's talking about. We're going to have football in the fall, and what does that mean? But the athletic funds, their annual fund effort continued this spring, and raising funds for athletics here at the university, that continued to move forward. And that, I think for as far as I know, we've had a good, related to that, we've had season ticket renewals for football that have been very strong. So that, something that's going to continue to be monitored as well as when we can get back to playing games and getting some of that normalcy back. I hope that that's all going to be in the plan for the fall. I think for all of us, that would be a very good thing, but we'll have to see. But yeah, athletics is continuing to do their fundraising as well. Here at the university, you may have seen the JV and John L. Hunt, the Baseball Performance Center. They're still raising money for that wonderful facility that will be on campus. So yeah, their efforts are moving along as well.
And then Leanne said that capturing virtual meetings as a form of contact reporting in advance is also something that's new for us as well.
It is. A great question about, as we're all, for development professionals that have lived with the metrics of how we are evaluated for our performance. And I put myself in there always. we are thinking more about what does that look like in this point in time. And again, most of the time we're out evaluating how we're doing with personal meetings in our benefactors' homes or offices or something like that. But now we are taking, looking at the whole virtual piece of it. And I think the virtual visits is probably one of the number one things that we can be measuring more right now, because that's what's happening. So it is new, and I think into the future these virtual visits can come into play. I don't think they'll ever substitute for the one-on-one that we need to be having. That we always know with some of our large transformative gifts always happen at a very personal level, and don't think that can be recreated online. But there are opportunities to then, I say, for those that live further away from like our campus, if they live on the East Coast or West Coast, utilizing more of this technology now can be helpful, definitely. And I think we're opened our eyes to that a little bit more into the future.
And Katie has mentioned that Georgia's been doing some innovative outreach with their coaches too during the time, and that a lot of our ticket holders here at the university have donated their refunds to the Student Athlete Emergency Fund as well. So
yeah, that's great. Yeah.
Yeah, Mark, if I could share
please.
One of the things the University of Georgia is doing is they are utilizing their coaches, but they're having coaches call supporters of a different sport. So for example, they'll have their golf coach and their track coach call football donors and basketball donors. And it has been so successful just to create an awareness and exposure to the other sports on campus. And now many of their donors want to support those areas in addition to the sports that they were supporting.
Yeah.
Creative.
Yeah, that's right. And, you think about that in that particular sense that, how they got creative in a way that they may not have thought about before, and we're being forced to have some creativity that wasn't there before and yet is very beneficial. So I think that's great. Really good.
we also have a question about whether or not Campaign Arkansas is going to be extended.
Oh, well, that's a great question. We're scheduled to end June 30th this year. And, at this point, we are still planning to end June 30th. But I'll admit there have been some conversations about whether it would be appropriate to extend that or not. It probably will be a few more weeks before we decide whether we're going to do that or not. But we're in really good shape, very thankful for all the tremendous support that's come with Campaign Arkansas in the 8-year effort. We're closing in on our $1.25 billion goal. And so it's just been tremendous. We just want to make sure that during this time that we are listening well and being attentive to our donors and their expectations and what's best going forward. So we'll make a decision on that here pretty soon.
Awesome. And we'll do a couple more questions.
Okay.
We have one from Kelly Knight. She said, do you think this pivot in the way we do our fundraising and donor engagement will affect our future goal setting and metrics in just the short term and or the long term?
Ooh, that's a great question. I would say that perhaps it will. I think we're all very hopeful that we can get back into the ways that the tried and true ways of fundraising that have been successful for each of our organizations. But that may be a while. I think that's the other thing we have to keep in mind. And that's why why we're having this conversation today is because we don't really know. It could be that, we go back and then all of a sudden there's another outbreak and suddenly we're at a remote work assignment again. And so we've got to maintain that maximum flexibility in the midst of all this. But yeah, I do think that some of this pivot will impact where we head in terms of goal setting and how much money we're going to be raising into the future, especially this next year.
And then we'll do one more question. Lizzie asks, she said she wants to know your thoughts on fundraising or stewardship events that are traditionally in person and how they'll be affected in the foreseeable future.
Yeah, well, I do. Yeah, it's hard to know. I would say, the thing that we're learning about this whole crisis is the part about social distancing and staying 6 to 12 feet apart, and some things that just simply do not work for some events that we want to do, large gatherings. And so I know that we'll be leaning on our national leaders to help with those discussions going forward as well. But it's a little bit unknown at this point, but they'll definitely be impacted. I know in all the conversations that I continue to have with our donors, we want to see each other again. You know, we want to be together at events and doing some things. So, but if we can be strategic about maybe some virtual events and connecting in ways through Zoom or Teams, we could provide a nice bridge there before we can kind of get back to some of the normal work.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to keep everyone over time. So, Mark, do you have any final thoughts or anything you'd like to
Well,
add?
I just say thank you for joining me today and taking this hour. I know we could probably spend all afternoon talking about fundraising and where we are right now. And again, I'll say this, you know, our jobs are as important as they've ever been for our organizations. You know, day in and day out, we provide in working with some amazing donors, you know, some pivotal and incredible funding for each of our organizations. So our work cannot slow down. We've just got to find ways to be more creative, intentional about getting, you know, really getting the job done. So I just want to thank everybody that joined me today. Love to talk more in the near future. If you want to email me or give me a call, would love to talk more about this and love to hear your ideas as well. In fact, I'm scheduled to get on a call this afternoon with some other colleagues again at other institutions to hear what they're doing. So this is every day is sort of a learning. What can I do to learn more about what's going on right now in the world of fundraising? So again, I want to thank our whole advancement team and the work they're doing. They're just terrific. And our Chancellor and his leadership has been amazing as well. So thanks everybody. I really appreciate this time, and let's get together again soon. It's really nice to see everybody.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mark.
I want to thank everyone too for coming. And if this was your first Lunch and Learn to attend, we'd love for you to attend another one. Our next one is next Thursday at the same time at noon. And it's going to be with an alumni. His name is Eric Jones. Some of you may know him. He graduated in 2016 and has founded a shoe company out in California and is also a social media and brand personalization expert. And that's going to be great as well.